G'day from Las Vegas. Real estate investing. Just finished a workout and had a young lady ask me about real estate investing. And it seems really interesting that a lot of young people think they can't get into real estate. You know, it's too hard to get into real estate. Can't get the deposit. Can't do this. Can't. And there are multiple ways for young people to get into real estate, and it's actually a lot simpler than most make it. Now, that being said, will you need some form of a deposit? Yes, you will need some form of a deposit, and we can talk about that in just a moment. But I want to go over 3 strategies that I believe young people should use for real estate investing. So ultimately, as you get older, your real estate investing strategy changes. As you get further along the road, the strategy changes. But when you're young, these 3 methodologies should be the ones you're using to get yourself involved in real estate, started in real estate, and making serious gains early on. Because the earlier you make serious gains, the better it is, because you got the capital then to reinvest and obviously play out the whole game of real estate investing. So let's get started on strategy number 1. So strategy number 1 is using your own home as an investment. Now, the way you do this is you stay in that home for 2 years. What you buy is you buy something that is fairly run down, okay? Not a bad property, just run down. It needs painting, it needs carpet, it needs modernizing, the garden needs redoing, the light fixtures need redoing, the kitchen probably needs an overhaul, the appliances need an overhaul. So what you do is you buy that house, fairly run down, good market area, good neighborhood, and you take that house over that 2 years. You invest your time and energy over the next 2 years. You convince some of your friends to help out. Oh, thanks for typing in where you're at, gang. Good to see you here. Daniel, good to see you. Graham, good to see you. Keep typing in where you're at, gang. If you're new to Drive Time, we all do that so we know where we're investing and we know where we're driving to today. So what you do every 2 years is you move from that property to the next property. Now, there's 1 or 2 ways to move. One is sell and buy the next property. And in most cases, I would recommend that because there's no taxation if you sell it, but there are fees if you sell it. But there's also fees if you do the second option, which is to redraw against it. So redrawing against it basically means that you go to the bank, borrow again 2 years later with the new valuation, because it should value up between 20 and 30% if you've done the right stuff on it. Now, you can learn about renovation in my 30X Wealth. I do a whole bunch on real estate in 30X Wealth. Make sure you study that, and my book, The Real Estate Coach. So that's the first strategy. Use your home as an investment. Use the house you're in as an investment to scale up, and do it every 2 years. So by 20 years of owning a home, you've done this 10 times. You should be in a multi-million-dollar house. You should be in the house of your dreams, and it should be almost fully paid off because you've done this well. Or if you do it the other way, you own 10 properties at the end of that 20-year cycle because you've kept every one, you've redrawn, and you've used the deposit to go and buy the next house and the next house and the next house. And with inflation plus your ability to increase the value of the property, you're going to be doing very, very well for yourself in that 20 years. So the second strategy for investing in real estate as a young person, and this is a simple strategy I've taught to many young people, and that is what you look for is you look for a house with a lot of bedrooms in an area near a university or near a hospital or between a hospital and a university, somewhere where people are going to want to rent by room, not going to want to rent for the whole property. So, for example, I taught this to a couple of young kids many, many moons ago. They're not young kids anymore. They bought a 5-bedroom place and they cut 2 extra bedrooms into it, and they converted a half bath into a full bath. So that gave them a 7-bedroom place, which was between a college and a hospital. They rented out the rooms, room by room by room. So in other words, they're making enough money, because if you rent by room, you're going to make more money than if you rent the entire property out. They lived in the house. They spent those 2 years upgrading the house as well. And then they bought a second one. So one of them lived in one of them lived in the other. And so they did it again. They renovated the second house in their spare time, doing the whole thing. They had a great lifestyle. They had lots of young friends. They had a great place that the mortgage was being fully funded by the people renting the rooms, and allowed them to get some serious capital gain over that period of time. You know, it's a very simple strategy. You got to be willing to do the work. You got to be willing to collect the rent. You got to be willing to have a bunch of people living with you, which most young people have roommates anyway. Why not make it that your roommates are the ones funding the entire exercise? Okay. The third way for a young person to get into real estate is traditional investing, but you're going to need the deposit. Now, where does the deposit come from? Now, if you're pretty lucky, you'll have a parent who can co-sign with you and co-sign for that deposit. If you're not in a situation for a parent to co-sign it, you might have an uncle, an aunt, a friend's family, a friend's parent, or someone that you can ask to co-sign, and they will have some equity in their own home and allow you. You renovate that property, you go back a year, 2, 3 years later, you redraw it, therefore the bank will lend you more. You pay back the entire amount, so that person is no longer on the hook, and within 3 to 5 years, you've got your first property that you're moving through with. Now, if you don't have anyone in that situation that is a relative, a friend, anybody like that, if you're a young person, you're looking to get in real estate, and there's nobody that will help you with the deposit for you to get going, for you to get started with any of this thing, then what you're going to have to do is start to find a seller who will give you the deposit. Now, what does that mean? The seller will hold a percentage of the sale. The seller will move it through. Now, in some countries, not all countries, here in the United States, there's certain states where you can do this, where you can take over the previous loan, where you're moving in, you take over the loan. And so instead of borrowing 100% of the bank, you're borrowing, say, 20 or 30% from the previous owner, and you're borrowing the 70 or 80% from the bank. Now, it takes a lot more work, it takes a lot more strategy, it takes a lot more learning to be able to do this sort of thing, where you can borrow some money from the owner and some money from the bank to get the transaction completed. Now, worst comes to worst, one of my most fun students ever, I didn't know this at the time because he didn't tell me, and if he had told me, I would have probably been not that happy with him, but I nicknamed him after that MasterCard Marty. Now, the reason I nicknamed him MasterCard Marty is because literally he used several credit cards to go out and draw down the cash and make a deposit on his first property. Very small property, very low value, but he got the property and he got started, and now he has a very large tens of millions portfolio. Anyway, if you're young and you want to get into real estate, you can. Don't use the excuse of being young. Study now, study hard, read the books, do the study, do the work. All right, what's your top learning from today? Type in your top learning from today. Graham, Daniel, let's get them out there. Take care, everybody. Talk to you on the next drive time. Bye for now.